So, Sean, what would you say is the best way for businesses to set themselves up to run a successful CX program in this upcoming year?
Yeah, CX now has been around for a bit, right? So we have, companies in the space that specialize in experience management, or XM has become like a acronym that people learn and know and understand. And now, a lot of companies, and Courtney's worked with a lot of them that are our clients, and there's many who are not our clients, have these experience management programs at various levels of maturity. I mean, some of them are just beginning and some of them are in the middle, some of them may be very mature. But now is a great time to take a look at them and think about, how can we move them to the next level wherever we are? So if they're just beginning, how do you make them a little more mature? If they're mature, how do you get them to go to the next level, right? And we think that there are a few, core areas that you need to look at to really optimize your CX program. And Courtney, we're going to go through those today. I'm excited to do that with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's dive right in today.
So, Courtney, when we work with clients, and these are 3 steps, and you can think of this. I think the 3 steps we're giving you, anybody can go through and really take a close, hard look at your own program. If you haven't created a CX program or an XM program, this is a great framework, I think, to think about the areas that you need to focus on. But you can do this yourself, or you can partner with a company like PeopleMetrics. We, help companies assess kind of these areas all the time. And we're going to start with what we think is the core to any great CX program, and that's design, right? Like, everybody buys CX programs for the technology. They may even buy the technology first, Courtney, sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then they're sitting there looking at this technology like, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to use it to help measure and improve the customer experience? And without design, there's really nothing, there's no program without good design. And you do a lot of design yourself. So I thought maybe you can comment on how important and what are some of the key elements of this?
Yeah, of course. I was going to say the same thing. You can invest in the technology, but if you don't have the right design or the right survey journeys, you're not getting the data that you need. So the design is arguably one of the most important parts, I would think, of the CX program that you're building. So this can be, what particular questions you want to ask, who are you asking it to? So who's your audience? And, that can be different groups of people. So we've talked previously on this channel about different survey channels, and depending on who your audience is, what customers you have, if you have different customer segments, you can ask different questions to those different segments. Things like, what metrics are you looking to really track or trend over time? What's important to you as a business? Incorporating all those types of questions and brainstorming questions and understanding the customer journey are super important, and making sure, you have the right survey that's actually going out into field.
Right, Courtney, you said journey. So journey implies that a customer has multiple touch points probably with your company, right?
Right.
And part of the design is deciding, which touch points are you going to cover in your CX program? And maybe if you're an immature program, you're not going to want to tackle them all at once, right? Maybe you start with contact center, or maybe you start with digital, or maybe if you have an in-store, you start with in-store. It's really whichever one you feel like you interact either most with your customers or have the biggest impact on your customer experience. Yeah. And that's what you'd want to choose. Now, maybe you have a more mature program and you're missing a touch point. Maybe you've covered them all except for contact center. And that's one that you really know you need to focus to level up your program. And that would be something to focus on design. So when I think of design, I think of touch points, and then I think of the people, just like you said, who are you asking the experiences of within those touch points? Mm-hmm. And then what's your objective? So is it a transactional objective? So we talk in my book, Listen or Die, I talk a lot about this. There's transactional surveys and measurement programs within CX. And then there's relationships. Some companies are happy to do a biannual, quarterly, or annual relationship study, and that's it. So that's reaching out to all of your customers at once. It's basically a inventory of all the touch points they may have had with you. And you understand at that point in time what your net promoter score is, how much compares to competitors, which touch points are doing well and which touch points aren't, make some changes over the next year, and then you measure again over time. That's a great way to start. That's good for certain companies. Other companies really want to have their pulse on the customer experience on a daily basis, right? And that's a lot of our programs are transactional at PeopleMetrics, where we're measuring the experience your customers have, say, with your contact center every day. And you're able to figure out like which customers are having a poor experience. So part of design is, how does an alert get triggered when a customer has a poor experience? Where's that alert going to, and what are you going to do with it once it happens? What's the workflow?
Right.
So these things have to be thought about before any kind of implementation, or it won't be kind of where it could be.
Right.
And the goals, that's what I was talking about. What are the goals of the program? And are they integrated into your surveys? So transactional surveys, as we talked about on PeopleMetrics Live before, ideally are very short surveys based specifically on the transaction and nothing else. Relationship surveys are much longer and can be much more strategic in nature and accomplish a lot more. They're just very different surveys, and it depends on your goal. Is your goal to continuous improvement on this one touch point? Then a transactional survey is the way to go. Is your goal to have a holistic overview of what all of your customer experience is, as well as your net promoter score, and understand how it compares to competitors? Relationship survey is the way to go. But you don't know until you kind of figure out what the goals are.
Right. Yeah. Understanding your goals and understanding also who your stakeholders are and the people that are kind of making those decisions, I think is extremely important. And I think also it's really important to get a cross-functional team perspective, if that makes sense. So getting perspective from different teams, marketing, operations, CX, all those things, C-suite, getting perspectives from all of those groups is extremely important when designing a survey. And as you said, Sean, without these goals and without understanding the strategic overview of what you're trying to get out of the project, you don't really know what to ask. So understanding that is extremely important.
We've talked about touch points again. Like, remember, the common touch points these days are, if you have an in-person interaction at your establishment. So let's say a hotel, obviously that's a very, very important touch point. There are usually a contact center touch point these days where your customer is able to call in somewhere, whether that's you manning that or a partner that you've hired. Understanding that experience is super important. And digital in all its forms is really important these days. Digital around your website, digital around any support you're offering digitally through chat bots or other type of support items, through apps that you may be asking your customers to use. Feedback on that experience, the digital experience, is becoming just more pervasive. I think COVID, really kicked it off, but it's not becoming less important.
And even back to Courtney's point of what could be missing, that's why it's so important to get feedback from different departments within your organization. It's not just the customer experience, people running the customer experience surveys.
Right. Yeah, I've seen before, sometimes the CX team or the people that are implementing this project, it's kind of siloed and not a whole lot of support from other teams. And I just think, seeing that, it's very important to kind of get that buy-in from all teams and perspectives.
And just the other part of design is around, figuring out who is going to get this information and when. So if it's a transactional, if you're getting continuous information from your customer, say at the contact center, which is the example I've been using, who in your organization is going to take action on that feedback? Who needs access to seeing that? Who's going to get the alerts where customers aren't happy? Who's going to be taking a look at the data from 30,000 feet every so often and understand what the story is from the data? How is that all going to work? And that's part of design too. Right.
Yeah. And, the whole point of this webinar today is that, and you touched on this earlier, Sean, is that all of these elements we're talking about are things, even if you have a mature program now, these are things that you can still incorporate and kind of take a step back and see, where can we make adjustments or what touch points can be added. We need to relook at what the strategic goals are, things like that. So these are all doable for CX programs of any life stage.
Without a doubt. Okay. Oh yeah. So this is another point of design. So we're seeing, Courtney, integration between, say, market research and CX all the time. So, if there's a continuous listening post that you've set up via a touch point, whether it's digital, whether it's in person, contact center, whatever, you have access to your customers all the time. So what we're seeing is, a market researcher may have a question they need answered, say about a message they're considering or a new campaign slogan or whatever it is. And you can then use your CX program to get an answer to that question, get enough completes, and then turn off the question.
Right.
So being able to have room in your program for strategic market research questions, which is what the first part of this bullet is super important to consider. And if you really want to level up your program, are you taking a group of your customers you really care about, your most important, we call them high impact customers, and putting together what we call an advisory board where you're getting feedback from them on a regular basis throughout the year? People don't think about this all the time, but it's one of the most effective ways that you can create, a listening program with your customers. And it's highly effective. It's about recruiting them. It's quicker to get feedback from them. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. And it would be for a more mature program, I'd say, Courtney, right? Mm-hmm. One where they've covered most of the touch points and they're looking to level up. And This is a great way to level up their program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think customer advisory boards are some of the best way to get a real good pulse on your current customers. And similar to the surveys, you can have customer advisory boards that have different groups. So, it can be your different customer segments based on demographics, based on their touch points, based on their customer journey. There's lots of different ways that you can kind of parse out a customer advisory board, but it's a great way to kind of get a pulse on a quarterly, semi-annually, annually basis, whatever you might choose it to be. And customer advisory boards can be anything from, focus groups to roundtables, to one-on-one interviews. There's so many different things that you can do to kind of get that pulse on your customers.
Yeah, Alexander, we have a great PeopleMetrics Live. It covers just customer advisory boards. So if anybody wants to dive into that, it's on our YouTube channel, and it goes through all of the considerations you might need for that one. And I highly recommend checking that out.
Yes.
All right. So
now on to number 2.
Right. So, hey, we talked about technology to begin with, and once you get the design right, the technology comes to life. Like that makes a CX program or an XM program come to life. And without it, it's really not possible to impact the organization and really move the needle on CX, frankly. So it's part of the equation. The question is, almost everybody has this. The question is, are you getting your money's worth out of your technology or investment in your CX software platform? So the first thing we look at is, are your people using it? And do you know how many of your people are using it and how often? Do you have a goal on that? Is it like a daily goal where everybody should be looking at their dashboard daily, or is it a weekly goal? And are your alerts getting closed in the amount of time that you've designated? And are people like really using the information to make decisions to improve the customer experience?
Right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, and having a platform like PeopleMetrics where you can create all of those users and users at different levels too. I have a client that is in the financial industry, banking area, and they've got thousands of users, and it ranges from, bank managers to people in the C-suite, and their roles kind of see different data in the platform depending on what they want to be filtered by. If it's a specific branch or in a whole region or the company as a whole, they can see the data in different ways. And just, as Sean said, making sure that the people are engaged is just so important, because otherwise the data is virtually useless. If nobody's getting, the platform to be able to look at it. So yes, agreed.
And then the other one, are you using everything you've bought? So we all know on every software platform, everything from Word to, this is on PowerPoint. Do we create these on PowerPoint, Alexandra?
Yes.
Like, how much of PowerPoint do you think we actually use? Like 5%, 10%
No,
of its capability?
sure. Yeah, very low.
That's true.
Now, with CX platforms, XM platforms, it can be the same. So I would just make sure that you're taking advantage of everything you've bought. So everything from analytical tools that make sense of the data to big features like, if text analytics is available, like it is at PeopleMetrics, make sure that you're looking at that. All the different ways that you can extract feedback now from customers. So, SMS has become a really important way to listen to customers and have a conversation. So either SMS links, Courtney, right, which we use a lot, yep, or these responsive conversations on text. They're becoming more and more popular with regard to surveys.
Yes. Yeah. So the SMS can be done a couple of ways, like you said. One can be just sending the survey link to individuals. And then once they click the link, it'll open it up into their Safari or whatever their Internet Explorer is. Or you can have a more interactive form of SMS, which is very streamlined and oftentimes preferred, I would say, by respondents, where you can actually have the individual survey questions sent to them and they respond with what their answer is. And it's kind of back and forth, very interactive. And it's just a quick way to kind of get that data in a form that is familiar and easy for your respondent, because most of us have iPhones, most of us text, that kind of thing. So it's very easy for the respondent to do. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what the whole point of all this is making sure it's the easiest form for your respondents.
Correct. Crosstabs, things like that, driver analysis, significance testing. Are you taking advantage of that? Like I said, text analytics is something that is summarizing unstructured feedback from your customers, open-ended comments, free-form text in ways that you can make sense of it on a daily basis. That's something you should absolutely, even if you have it, are you tuning it? Is the accuracy what it can be? Are you using it on questions that you're able to? Is it smartly configured? There's all of these different pieces to the to text analytics. And then if you're in a business with social reviews, are the social reviews being integrated with your survey data? And are you able to look at it side by side? And is it coming in on an automatic basis? That's just a few off the top of our head areas that we see people maybe not taking advantage of.
Yeah, and just to add on to the social reviews. So the social reviews are, the unsolicited feedback that we're getting. So when we're actually sending out these surveys that's solicited, we're directly asking you like, hey, we want your feedback. But a lot of the time, and I'm sure we've all experienced it, maybe you had a good experience or a bad experience and you go to Google and you post a review or Yelp or whatever it might be. There are platforms like ours that kind of integrate those pieces of unsolicited feedback so that you're kind of getting both pieces. And then you can kind of understand what are some other underlying issues that or opportunities that might be happening within your business.
Without a doubt. And then there's the future of the tech is really impressive. Like there's going to be a time, probably in 23, Alexandra, my bet is we'll have a webinar, we'll have a PeopleMetrics Live on this, where you'll be able to use a text analytics type of approach on conversations that your agents are having with your customers on contact centers. So this is talk about unsolicited, right? That's not solicited. That's AI or artificial intelligence being able to group all of the customers' conversations they're having with your reps together and identifying trends, key phrases, terms that are happening in a real-time basis, and understanding how your agents are interacting with your customer and delivering the experience your customer expects, analyzing their speech together. And it's going to be like what's coming in CX tech world is really, really exciting. But it's going to be hard to keep up on it. It's something to keep in mind to the audience, that there's, to understand and try to keep abreast to what's going on with the new features and new capabilities.
Absolutely. It's not too far off. I could definitely see that coming down the pipeline.
I've seen it.
It's coming.
And when you think about it, because even when I'm completing a survey after a conversation with a vendor that started out poor, but they ended up fixing the problem, I often don't like to give them a bad review because they did end up fixing it, or they at least showed some form of sympathy or empathy to fix the problem. So the idea of recording or using AI to get the full picture of the conversation
that's a great point, amazing. Actually.
Really good.
Yeah, and I think that also just kind of speaks to, like you said, Sean, about the text analytics and how important that is. I mean, I know one of my clients also in the financial industry, they, have ATMs at their locations, and there is a question in the survey that asks, how easy was it to use the ATM? And there were a couple of responses that we were getting in that were low, and we were just wondering what was going on. So we took a look at the text analytics, and it was because the glare on the screen of the ATM, and there were so many comments about it, but it was just like, we wouldn't have been able to kind of figure that out based on just a ranking of what's your ease. Oh, you rated it a 1 out of 5. Well, we don't know what the context is, but the text analytics helped us to give that context to really understand why they're giving the score that they're giving. So text analytics has a lot of value for sure.
All right, let's get to the final step. Without this, what do you have? Insights and action, right? So this is the reward for doing all the hard work on design and really taking advantage of all the technology that you've already bought. How do you understand what the customers are saying, and most importantly, act on it so you can improve their customer experience? So there's lots of ways to do this. I think we may be a little biased on this, Courtney, because we know the power of taking a step back, moving the data from your platform to, say, Excel or SPSS, and really looking at the data in terms of what is the story, what's being said, where are the strengths, where are the areas for improvement, and what are some options that you can really do next to improve the customer experience, using a third party like PeopleMetrics to do so. And I think using a third party has advantages in that we don't have institutional biases within the organization on what should be done. We can just offer kind of our unbiased opinion. And we look at this type of data all the time. So we kind of know what to look for that has the biggest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking at it on a regular cadence, whether that's monthly, quarterly, yearly, is important. And it's looking at the data, as you said, in a analysis context, and also just, taking a look and seeing, are you getting the data that you find valuable? Because if you're not, then, it's kind of going back to that design section. It kind of goes in a circle there, and it can be a cycle, and that's okay. That's important to be able to take a look on whatever cadence and say, is this program giving us what we need? If not in a particular area, how can we change that?
And Courtney, I want to just clarify what this is. Like, this can be PeopleMetrics or whomever your partner is taking a step back and putting together a report on a PowerPoint deck like this and reading it out to you and having a discussion. It can mean having a workshop after that with your team to really brainstorm, how do we implement this within the organization? That's really taking it like to the next level. Or it could be a 30-minute, 45-minute meeting with you, Courtney, going through your dashboards and you having a discussion on what you're seeing. So it's not a formal report, it's a conversation. Whatever you're doing, you have to take a step back and have a conversation about the data so you can understand what to do next. It's not going to magically come to people, typically.
Right. You don't want your program to get stale. And, it's a balance, because you want to make sure that your program is consistent enough that you can get some trending good data. But you also want to be nimble enough that you can, change it up if necessary, if you're not getting the data that you feel is valuable.
Okay. And then how are you sharing, right? So sharing is caring, isn't that right? So if you're not sharing the information, whether that be the report that maybe a PeopleMetrics put together, how do you distribute that? Or maybe you meaning the client is taking the report we put together and putting a memo together or an email that highlights really what's important and what are some next steps and distributing it to everybody. There's a variety of ways to do this. We've had clients that have blown up our reports and put them on walls when people were in the office, although some people still are, but when everybody was in the office, so they could see the results when people walked in. Some people have them on monitors, so everybody at the organization can see the key metrics, net promoter score, customer effort, those type of measures, customer satisfaction, things that they really want to know and how that's been trending and has it been going up and down, which locations have the highest customer satisfaction ratings, some quotes from customers. There's all sorts of creative ways to share them, but the key word is share. Did I overwhelm you, Courtney, with my enthusiasm?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's nothing really to add there. I think that's great. All the different ways that you can share the insights. You can do, like you said, blow up the reports, put it on walls. You can do it in quarterly town halls, team meetings, newsletters, things like that. There's so many different ways. And there's also ways to kind of gamify it and make it more fun for your team as well. I've seen a lot of competition among different branch locations and things like that. And it's playful, it's fun, but it's a good way to kind of keep them on their toes and make sure that they're delivering the best experience that they can to their customers.
I mean, another way to do this, and we've had a PeopleMetrics Live on this, is we do recognition alerts in PeopleMetrics programs often. And this is asking a customer, did anybody go out of your way to exceed your expectations or wow you in the latest interaction that you had? And if they say yes, we ask who that was and what did they do? And then you can share that, what did they do, right back to that person.
Right.
And that's just a beautiful feedback loop, from a customer who was wowed and had a great experience. And then that makes the person who delivered it feel even that much better about giving it. So they're going to give better experiences in the future.
Yeah, see, it loops around to the employee experience.
It does.
True.
And benchmarks. So benchmarks are also important, right, Courtney? Like that's another way that you can really understand and take action and understand how you're doing.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple different types of benchmarks you can obviously utilize. That's, things from industry benchmarks to company size, whatever it may be, but it's a good way to kind of keep you on track and see kind of where you're tracking with other companies within your realm, whether that's the same industry or size, things like that. So having those benchmarks kind of implemented into the platform and being able to kind of compare against your results, I think is very valuable to see kind of where you line up against others.
Definitely.
And maybe where you can also improve.
We
kind of talked about this one already too, reviewing on a regular cadence for adjustments and updates. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this, Sean, but
I would just say, when you think of action to be taken, there's individual actions. So we've talked about alerts a little bit today. If an individual customer support experience, you should have a process to follow up with that customer, assuming it's worth your while and you have a business that makes sense for. If you have, we call them high impact, high value customers, every one of them should be followed up on. If you have a B2C, big B2C business, maybe it's just the ones that have the highest lifetime value to make sure that you follow up on them right away. So you can take action individual level, and you can take action at a systemic level, we call it, across all of your customers. So if you're seeing trends across lots and lots of alerts, you know that there's something wrong. So fixing that individual problem is fine, but the long-term benefit is, let's say it's wait time at a hotel or checkout time, or your reps on the phone aren't knowledgeable, or they're not answering questions the way the customers want across lots and lots of customers. Then you can fix a systemic issue within your experience delivery, and that can reap huge benefits. Absolutely. So the point is, this is really where it all happens. This is where you're going to get true ROI out of your program, is by understanding, which is insights, and action, which is making change. You do those two things and you start seeing the experience go up. You start seeing your retention go up. You start seeing that these people then buy more from you and they recommend you more to others. So it's less expensive to get new customers. And it's like a virtuous cycle of beauty in the CX world, but you have to take this. You have to take the actions and you have to understand what's going on.
I feel like that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to take action on the data. Otherwise, what's the point of collecting the data? That's the whole point,
I think that what happens, Courtney, and you know this better than me at this point, is there's so much work in design, and the tech it's great, but it's a lot to manage, right? It takes a lot of energy. Then it's like, okay, we're done, but no, you're just beginning.
Right. No, it's true. And that could, having a manager, not to toot my own horn, but just having a manager like myself to be able to take a look at that data for you, or making sure internally that you have a team that's willing and able to take a look at data, is extremely valuable.
This is like having Courtney is like having your own CX personal trainer. You go to the gym, and like sometimes you don't feel motivated to do anything. You need that trainer to motivate you and get the most out of your workout. Like, she'll do that, and it's totally worth it. And anyway, that's my last. I guess the last PeopleMetrics Live of 2022, and that's my final parting.
Great, that's great.
All right, so we're definitely gonna get to one question though. Okay. This is a good one. There are so many different components to a CX program. How much is too much?
That's a good question.
What
do you think, Courtney? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we kind of touched on it. It's having a team available to look at the data, or having somebody that is already identified like myself to be able to look at the data for you. Because when you don't have a team or the people to take a look at the influx of data, you're not getting the value from the program. So I would say, if you don't have the team, or there's not someone to review the data, I wouldn't necessarily have a huge program. Do what's manageable at the end of the day.
Let me piggyback on that. Too much is when customer feedback is coming in, and you're not able to, for whatever reason, understand it, meaning gaining the insight and taking action on it. If there's some reason why you're overwhelmed, or you don't have enough people to do that, or whatever the reason is, then that's probably too much, Alexandra. And you want to just take a step back and really just focus on maybe one touch point where you're able to do that, and scale it back a bit.
Well, that's about all we have for time today. Thank you both for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.